Oh.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Drunk Knitting with Kyle Cassidy. And today we have one of my personal knitting heroes, is Amy Singer, who is, as everybody knows, the creative, I would say mastermind behind Knitty. Is that accurate?
If you think my mind is masterful, I don't know if it is, but I'm the person that came up with it. So there's that.
And as we all know, in the baby days of the knitting internet, Knitty was like the go-to source for patterns, free patterns, and just really well done patterns, which was important, especially when you were learning how to knit. I still to this day use the tutorial on, what is it? Seaming my
Kitchener stitch.
Thank you. Yes.
Everyone tells me that.
Yeah.
Teresa is a lovely person. We started when there was just lots of little scattered things all over the web. This was 2002. And so the first thing we did was collect everything in one place. And then I had everything professionally tech edited by friends of mine who just were really smart. I didn't go to, people who tech edited for a living. And over time, we have found our way to some super wonderful people who've also made careers out of this stuff. But at the beginning, it was like us in a barn putting on a show. It was really fun. And it's still fun. It's just 18 years later.
Yeah. And
how is that possible?
You've done something new recently with Knitty, correct?
Our funding?
Yes.
Yes. Well, we started completely free because we just wanted to do this. And then people started to write and say, we wanted to advertise, please, can we advertise on your site? And this was before big networks. These were like just people. So we took ads, and then I was able to pay the contributors and then the staff and then me, and then I could quit my job. And then 2008 happened, and the internet went and the world went and there was no money anywhere. And advertising started to do bad things. And by 2015, we were in a position where we were making just a tiny fraction of what we had been making. We were, I don't know how we were paying our bills. We were just barely managing. And the combination of following the people who started Patreon, the musicians who started them, and following Amanda Palmer and reading about how she took her, very committed fan base and found a way to help them help her financially. And I read that and I'm like, is it okay? Can I do this? All sorts of, ego issues and that whole imposter syndrome thing. And so I read the book and I went, I can do this. And then I did it. It took me all summer. I put the thing together. I launched it. And within a month and a half, we were fully funded. And so knock wood, I will always knock wood here. There's wood. I will always knock wood when I talk about that. We've been pretty much anywhere between 75 to 90% funded by our patrons ever since. And now it's 5 years later, and there are just around 3,000 of them. And it's like that thing with the underpants. You buy underpants and you make profit. Well, I don't know where that comes from. Some comic I saw somewhere.
South Park.
Thank you. South Park. Underpants, South Park. I'll have to remember that for next time. So because there's so many of them, people give whatever they can, and lots of $2 and $5 is add up, and it's enough for us to pay my salary, pay all our contributors, pay the people who work on Knitty every issue, pay for the server. I mean, it keeps us going.
I said, once you launched, I said, number one, the number of times I go to look at the Kitchener Stitch article. Number two, I haven't knit a pattern off Knitty in quite a while because I've been so busy with books and doing my own thing. But for all the times that I knit free patterns, I'm like, of course I'm going to contribute, because I feel like you guys gave that for free for so long that it's, a moral obligation for me to support you at this point for everything you've done.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that helped me get my head around doing this, because, I'm American, but I'm also Canadian, and I've lived in Canada since I was like this tiny wee child. And asking for things and asking for help seems hard, but reading about how Amanda specifically said that it's okay to ask for help, that, your people who love you want to support you, and it's nice to let them in. And that's exactly what's happened. So we're still 100% free. We are just we have our costs supported by these wonderful people who are able to support us. And those who can't, that's totally cool. The reason people support us is so that we can stay free. And I think that's the coolest thing, that they're just so, they see the big picture. I love that.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. It's an amazing resource. For new knitters, experienced knitters, everybody in between, there is something on knitty.com for every single person. And I really appreciate you being here today to talk to Kyle, because Kyle is a newer knitter and does need a little bit of help with some things, specifically right now choosing needles.
This is exciting to talk to someone who's at the beginning of their journey. Because learning to knit, like any craft that you get really excited about, if you get into it, then that's all you can think about for a while. So I think you've been doing that for a while, Kyle. You a little bit focused?
So Joan and I have been working on this knitting book about Icelandic sweaters, and we were supposed to be in Iceland photographing it in April, I think. And then COVID happened, and April turned into like June, and then June turned into August, and then August just obviously wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And with it being pushed so far ahead, we realized that it would be possible for me to learn how to knit. And when we do go, which is now scheduled for next April, me actually be able to knit an Icelandic sweater while we are in Iceland photographing this book.
I love that. That's a great plan.
So that's where I'm headed right now. And there are people following along who are kind of learning as I'm learning. And Joan has this series of things that I need to learn. And she's going to have me knit a hat next. And because I need to be able to knit in the round to knit this sweater. And in order, as a stopgap to knit the hat, I have got a circular needle, which I borrowed from somebody, but I'm going to need my own set of circular needles to take to Iceland and knit this sweater. And I'm a photographer. I'm not really a knitter. And I have had a problem in my photography, which I'm hoping not to get into in my knitting. So I have ended up with 3 completely different camera systems. And so I have this Nikon camera system. This is like the workhorse of the professional photography world. It does absolutely everything. There's an attachment for everything. It's very heavy. Carrying this stuff around has, given me muscle and back problems for years. And then I also got this Micro Four Thirds system because it's smaller and it does maybe 65% of what the Nikon does. And it's useful. And it's the kind of thing that I'll bring around and do some stuff. And then there's my Leica, which does absolutely nothing as well as either of the other cameras, but it's so beautiful and it's way more expensive than any of the other ones. And this is the one I love and that I'm going to be buried with. And so I'm trying to figure out which set of needles will I like.
That's a big challenge. And I love the metaphor of, the comparison of cameras to needles. Everything is so personal, and that Nikon that you love, that's the photographer's choice. There are going to be other people who are going to say, no, I would never touch that. And they're great photographers because tools are so personal.
Right.
So I'm going to go through a couple of recommendations because I remember when I saw your tweet go by saying I needed needles, I go, let me grab him before he buys some crap. I wanted to write him a message, which is you. I wanted to write your message saying, we can help you do this. And here's some things not to do. Okay. So let me just quickly show you stuff that may look familiar, like that. Mm-hmm. These are my grandma's needles. And they're made, most of them are made of plastic. They have this little thing on the end. And you see how long it is? I can't even fit it in the screen. These are really not practical. Some people like them because of the way they knit. But nowadays, I like these better in a jar than in my hand. So we're not going to use those. If you come across them and you like them, great. But I think we're going to show you stuff you like better. Now, this is how I used to collect my needles. I used to buy one set of needles when I did a new project. And if I had the set, I didn't need to buy them. So here's a case from Lexi Burns, who no longer makes bags, but we love these. And in here, I have pages and pages of needles of every size, and all the cords are different lengths because you want a short cord for a hat and a long cord for a sweater or a blanket. Right? All these different options. So many. They're coming out the back. There's that many. And this is okay. I mean, This is a really pretty needle as an example. This is rosewood. It's beautiful. It has a very nice point on it. It has a nice smooth join, but that happens. That was actually not planned, but these are old enough that they're going to fall apart at some point. Glue fixes that. The thing about circular needles, let me find a pair that are not going to fall apart. Here's a cheap pair. This is a super cheapo pair. You can tell by the gray plastic. They look like they belong in a hospital, right? The cord, look at that cord. That is not good.
It has some memory to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you don't want that. What you want is a cord that just relaxes. And nowadays, the needles that we can get are specifically made not to do this. And sure, you can get a kettle and steam this straight, but it's going to take on a crimp if you stick it in your bag the wrong way. So the thing about needles nowadays is, yeah, we want circulars, even though they're, we may be knitting back and forth, you still can use circulars. When you're on a bus, if we're ever on buses again, and you drop one, it's not gone. It's still attached. It also helps the weight of the project sit on your lap instead of being held up by your wrists, and that's what straight needles do. You don't want that. That's hard on everybody. So nowadays, I have a lot of visual aids today. Nowadays, what we want are interchangeable needles. And that means that the tips are one product and the cords are a separate product. So I'm pulling open a kit here. This is my favorite all-around needle, Haya Haya. They come in different color kits, and what you get, as I do my dramatic reveal, as you can see, it's probably well overloaded because I bought extra tips because I like it this much. So in here, all the different sizes. I have one loose one that probably belongs to the one next to it. Let's pull out a set here. And what we have are, here you see it, a very pointy point. Is that visual? Do that way. I'm not used to doing this makeup demo shit. So we have that, and then we have on the other end, we have the screw that screws it into the cord. Okay? There are variations. You'll find ones that have holes to help you tighten it onto the cord. There are all sorts of different kinds. There's some made by Addie that actually click into the cord. But what you get is a set of these two, and you'll check. These ones have been used so well that the writing is almost gone off them. So if you can't see the sizing, you need to have this thing that's called a needle sizer, and it looks a little bit like that, and then you find the hole that it fits in, and that's what size the needles are. So that helps you.
I want to interject really quickly and say how cool that needle sizer is, because this is what I still have.
Those work great.
But yours is way cooler.
Well, I'm going to show you this thing in a minute because that thing is really cool. There are all sorts of needle sizers. There's this one here that's super pretty, and people often wear it as a necklace.
Ooh.
You can see that. Isn't that nice?
Like
and it comes in all different colors, and then you find the hole that it fits in. It's tight, so that's too tight. It's this size, and then you go and you look at the label that's on the hole you pick. So you
could have solved a lot of this by just engraving the needles.
Well, actually, I will show you some that have been made better. I mean, as time goes on, people improve in different ways, and they may improve in a way that you don't care about, but someone else thinks is brilliant. So in the back of this kit are all my cords, lots and lots of cords. And the cool thing about this is you can have, let me see now, I'm losing my tips. You can have short cords, you can have long cords, all different lengths. This, you can see there's a cord that's one length, and then there's still more. So the long one is something I might use for a blanket where I'm going all the way around it. And this shorter one, lost it on the floor. Here we go. So much for my visual aids. So the shorter one is a great everyday size. So you have this little thing here that you screw in the tip to, like that. And with this particular set, you only need one extra thing. You can do it by finger tightening. But if you actually get a little piece of rubber, which comes with the kit, and I'll show you that here. You should see what my desk looks like right now. So you take this little piece of rubber that comes with the kit, looks like that. You take your needle, hold the needle, take the bottom, tighten. That is not coming out until you want it to. Now, like anything, any product has a potential failure point. There is a point at which this may break and come off. So you need to keep spare cords. They're $4 or $5. But the key here is to pick a set of needles that has all these different attributes that work well for you. So here are the attributes. Number one, the point. If it's dull, you will find yourself having trouble getting into fine little stitches. But if you have a splitty yarn, a yarn that wants to come apart in little threads, a pointy needle is going to drive you crazy.
That was my first problem when Joan first was teaching me. I would start out with 15 stitches, and then the next row I would have 18, and then the next row I'd have 21 because I was splitting the yarn and then I was knitting both of them. And
so yeah, so that
was
can
a
be a
little-
problem. It's going to grow. It also can grow because of the first stitch on the end can often look like two, and that's a separate problem. But so the point is super important. I tend to like this point. These are the sharp ones from Haya Haya. So it has a pretty decent point without being anything dangerous. I can do that. It doesn't hurt. And it's not dull. So this is a good all-purpose thing. The finish of the needle, these are made of steel of some sort. And it's not too slippery, which means if you have a slippery yarn, it's not going to go sliding off. I tend to knit, as I'm an allergic person, I can't knit with wool. So if I'm knitting with silk, something too slippery means my work is falling off my needles. When I put it on my lap, I set it down, I mishandle a stitch. So you want something that has a little grab, but not too much. Mm-hmm. With wool, it's so grabby. If it's too grabby on here, you will have trouble pushing all the wool down the yarn, down the needle, onto the cable and on the other end of the needle.
That is what I spend a lot of my time doing right now, is pushing the
forcing.
Yarn, pulling the yarn.
Yep. And so that's part of it. So you could have steel, you can have aluminum, you can have wood, you can have bamboo, you can have plastic. You can even have glass, but I don't know if there's glass interchangeables. You can even have carbon fiber. Every single one of those materials behaves slightly differently. Mm-hmm. I have found this one to be a good all-purpose, but I also really like wood for my purposes. The final thing is this section here. So if you take a look there, I can't see what I'm showing. It's got all sorts of places where there are connections. There's the place where the bottom of the needle attaches to the needle itself. It has the place where the cord comes out of the needle. Mm-hmm. And if you have any kind of roughness, every single one of those stitches as you push them past is going to be a pain in the patoot, and you're not going to like it. So you want to find something that has a good cord. As you can see, it's not all looped up. It's just sort of curvy. It's not all twisted. These actually rotate so that they don't stick. So that helps you not have troubles there. I find this to be very smooth. You can see it's kind of graduated as well. And I like this tip. So for me, these are my best all-purpose needles. They're Haya Haya sharps. Now, the other thing that's important, and unfortunately, you'll kind of have to go this deep unless you just want to wing it, and you don't want to wing it.
Right.
There are different
lengths of tips. I winged it 3 times buying cameras.
You might still need more than one set of needles. Okay. But as an all-purpose goes, if you have tiny, tiny hands, you might want the shorter tips, which are about 4 inches. I have small hands and I still can't use anything less than a 5-inch or 5.5-inch tip. Because what ends up happening, if the tip is too short, it feels really awkward and there's not a lot to hang on to as you're knitting. Joan's nodding. So obviously you have that same issue.
Well, yeah, and I tried buying the shorts one time. Like I saw short interchangeables advertised and I'm like, oh, that'd be really great for like doing smaller circumferences. And it hurt. Like I did not enjoy it at all.
Because you're really just holding it with this many fingers. There's not much more length than that. Mm-hmm. So this way I've got an entire hand's width and it's perfectly comfortable. So that's a good all-purpose needle. If you don't want to use metal, then a good quality bamboo, because there's garbage bamboo. You need to get the good stuff that's well finished, smooth, properly pointed. And a good yarn shop will be able to tell you what's the good quality. They shouldn't be carrying crap. Something you might find on like Amazon very well might be crap unless it's from a brand name. You should always support a local yarn shop anyway. We'd like to keep them around. They're very important. Let me show you a high-end set of needles. Now, this one is a little bit customized. My Rabbi Shmuley ate that. Aww. Anyway, these are Liku, which is a Scandinavian sounding name. I don't know if they're made in Scandinavia, but I will tell you they're gorgeous. Look at these. I think we need to take a quick
break and learn about your rabbit. How long have you had? How old is your rabbit?
I've had rabbits since the early 90s. Shmuley is the latest in a long line.
Can you send us a picture of Shmuley so we can put it up right now?
Yes, I will. He's adorable. I call him that because when I first met him, from the side, it looks like he's wearing a yarmulke just jauntily off on one side. You got to see his coloring. I've never named a pet within the first half hour of meeting them. So these needles, as you can see, some are missing because I'm using them because I love them that much. So they come in different color finishes. This is kind of a gray wash. And I don't know if you can see, it has a lovely point. It has a beautiful sort of hand stained look. And it has the size. Where is the camera on this? There, can you see that? That is the size imprinted in both metric and imperial. So that's not coming off. These have a different kind of attachment. It still is, it's a plastic covered mechanism, but it is metal inside. And then in the kit come all the different cords, all the different lengths. And these go on slightly differently. We have a screw here, and they mostly screw on except for those addies that click in. These you need to screw in. And then because of the way they work, they're very tight. So I'll show you the thing that is their magic tool. And I keep them in a little tin. And it's one of these. It's just a simple little wire connector. You put it on into the hole that's built into the cord, and then you have the leverage to tighten on the needle. And once it's on, it's very smooth. Some of these, the first time you put them on, they can be a little bit difficult. They're not perfectly milled, every one of them, but they've all gone on fine. And if there is a problem, you just take it back to the yarn shop and they give you a replacement, because yarn shops are awesome like that.
So could you then use that hole to drag a lifeline through your knitting?
You could, very good. You could absolutely do that. And there are cheaper needles that use this technique as well to tighten. I really like them because I find holding the wood is very, you know, as I'm going on, it's tightening better. I find holding the wood is very calming and soothing. I mean, we do knitting because it's tactile and enjoyable. So now here we go, it's tightened. That is not coming out. The only thing that might happen is, again, the metal, the cord, this might break. It does happen. And if it does, the cords are cheap. You just keep a few extra in your favorite sizes in your bag, and then you just replace it. So what we have is a smooth section here, smooth here, pointy enough to grab the stitches you need, and a nice gentle taper with absolutely nothing to catch on your work. And again, the cord, not too kinky. These are more expensive. I love them. These are, right now, these are my go-to, but when I need something in a size I don't have, then I go back to the Hiya-Hiyas.
I can pretty much assure you that there is no set of needles that is going to be more expensive than a camera that I have bought, so I am not going to
No, not at all. No way. One other thing that's really neat is that these have, and I just lost it, but I'll find it later. Oh, here we go. So some of them, you have cords that are a certain length, and if you need a longer cord, they often have these connectors that are just like a little metal tube, and you can put one cord into one end and one cord into the other, and you can get a super long cord, which is great for knitting around a blanket. And I've done that, so it's actually been really useful. So that's the needles. And here's what I'll tell you. Look at the point, look at the join between the needle and the cable and the little connector, and look at what the cable's made out of. Those are the most important things. And look for either wood or bamboo or a non-slippery metal. You don't want it grabby because that would be low quality, but it has to not be slick like ice. Then you need tchotchkes.
Obviously.
And some of them are silly, but most of them are super functional. So here are some things I think you need to have. And I have ways of getting them for you that are one at a time over life of the knitter and instant. So if you want instant gratification, I will show you that at the end. Some things you will need: a row counter. When you're trying to keep track of a pattern, grabbing this and go clicky is a wonderful thing. So this is from Clover. Clover makes some of the nicest tools. They're in Japan, but they're available everywhere. I think you're reaching for one, are you?
Kyle and I have been.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So Knitter's Pride makes those, and they make their stuff in India, which is pretty cool. You know, they support people of lower incomes, and then now they have a great product to make. So that's an awesome product, having a finger counter. I have another one somewhere that is just a little row counter that clips onto a bracelet that is made by Coco Knits. So you have this little slap-on bracelet with this metal platform, and you can stick anything magnetic on it, and one of them is a row counter. Very cool. You will need this, maybe not this one, not with the chicken and the egg, but you will need a measuring tape, a good one that is not stretched out. Okay.
I think we're 0 days away from the time where we could have a set of Bluetooth needles that count your rows for you as you go and probably read your pattern to you.
You know what? Maybe, but there's sometimes you haven't done this yet, but wait till you start knitting a sweater where you have to count this many stitches or rows up to be able to start the patterning for the upper body. And you also need to adjust your stitch count for the neck and the underarm at the same time. And then how are you going to count all that, my darling?
We are just one Kickstarter announcement away from somebody saying this set of knitting needles is going to tell you if you knitted the wrong stitch or you need to add the right color. And a little
maybe
Bluetooth,
but
your headset.
Part of the fun for me is figuring it out myself. I remember teaching myself how to pick up a stitch while I was babysitting this kid and they were napping. I was quite young and I dropped stitches all the way down and I had to teach myself how to weave it back up. And I was so proud when I figured that out. Okay, next thing you're going to need, stitch markers. Now these are multiple use stitch markers. You can close them up and then they become a ring that sits on your knitting and tells you something. It tells you where the round starts. It tells you where you want to be decreasing. It tells you where the sleeve's going to go. It can tell you anything you want. Or you can clip it into a stitch and leave it there and work your way up and it will say where you started doing something to the pattern. These are wonderful.
In a pattern, it will tell you if you need a split stitch marker, which is what that kind is.
Yeah. And actually be careful because there's split stitch markers that don't close. And those are really for crochet because they will fall out of knitting. Or there are the ones like that will lock and then unlock later when you want them. Now, this is something that has taken me many, many years of collecting to put together. This is my little magic kit. And on it, I have a tag with my email address and phone number so that this can get returned to me if I ever lose it. I have a non-stretchy, non-fabric measuring tape. Cheap little thing I got as a sample. It's actually been really helpful. I have my needle gauge. This is a very cool thing from Deborah's Garden that not only counts rows, but it has this little cutter. It's a airplane safe cutter when we ever get to fly again for thread. And it's pretty. It has a little pen, but wait. Now this kind of thing you can get at a yarn store. You can also get them, here's my secret, at places that sell fishing stuff. This is for fishing tackle originally, but these have been repurposed for knitting. They're actually also originally Japanese pillboxes, but if you look at the fishing stores, they're easier to find. So in here, you will see I have a little stitch holder. I have every kind of stitch marker you can imagine, circles, little hook. These actually were meant for men's clothing. These little things, they're like little light bulb, paper clippy kind of paper pin, clips. They work really well as stitch markers. I actually have, for when I travel, they're my SIM cards. Over here, I have these cool things. This is like the big capacity thing. I have these to go on the end of needles so I don't lose stuff. I can't get them out right now. This goes on your needle when you're done for now. Hold your work so it doesn't fall off. These are tiny little crochet hooks to pick up stitches. I put them in here. What is this? Put that on your finger.
It's a tiny little
and
hat.
You squeeze. What is it?
It's a tiny little hat for a.
No, it actually
it's
for when you have trouble with your hands. You put it on your finger and you squeeze a little bit and it gives you the nicest massage. It is the silliest thing. No, I find that very helpful. I've had carpal tunnel and all sorts of problems. And the other really key thing is every kind of darning needle, blunt and dull, and a straight pin for picking out stitches when you're stuck and they don't want to come unstuck. So I have all of this together in one kit, and that's taken me a while to collect. You don't want to do that? You buy this. This is brilliant. Ackerworks, spelled A-K-E-R works. They came up with this brilliant thing. So first of all, they made this kit, which I really like because it all goes together. And in it, it has, I'll take this away for a moment, measuring tape. It has scissors. It's not falling out. Why? Because there's magnets in here. It has stitch markers and needles and room for more. It has this edge, as we saw before, that is a needle gauge, very well labeled with all the different sizes. And then it has this magical device. This is the best gauge measurer device I've ever seen. We all love this. If you look online, the people at Modern Daily Knitting, we all love this. It has little teeth that go into your work and stay. And it has these 4-inch long slots where you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, how many stitches are in 4 inches. It's brilliant. So that clips onto the front and it stays there. Right there.
That is the coolest thing I've ever seen, honestly.
It took, these people are super smart. They started out making things for spinners. They now make this for knitters. It's absolutely brilliant. And if you put that in your bag, you'll have almost everything you could ever need when you're on the go. You don't have to worry about, oh, did I bring my little thing? It's all there. Other little bonuses, things that you're going to need at some point, you don't have to buy right away. What is that? These are blocking pins. And at some point when your sweater's done, you're going to want to make it lie flat, get it moist, and pin it so that it dries the right shape. And these are just tiny little rust-free pins with a point, and they go into your bed, a piece of carpet, some sort of a foam mat.
These
and you
things
can
are
block things exactly like what Joan has. One other thing for seaming, when the time comes, Clover makes these. These are just cheapo imitations. These are clips that save you from pinning, and they have little ridges so that they hold the work. So I'm actually seaming a sweater downstairs now. Did a very bad job. I have to fix it. But you put this on the work and boom, 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 everything is held together. You pin it, sew it up, done. Take them out, put them away. Altoids tins. Love my Altoids tins. I have quite a few. Which are these ones? Oh yeah, I did that already. So of that, basically what you need is a kit for your little bits. So something like this. And one set of needles for now. And let me tell you something about how you figure out what you like. Because you don't know yet, right? You're still using stuff people have lent you, you know, this is okay, but maybe there's something that would feel better. Okay, so one of the things the great Elizabeth Zimmerman said is that a 4.5 millimeter or US number 7 needle in 24 inches is the most useful all-purpose needle, 24-inch length, circular. If you were to buy that in a couple of different materials, buy one in bamboo, and most of these companies that make these needles, the interchangeable sets, they will make fixed sets as well. You can buy the fixed set, or you can go and buy just the tips and a cord to make a 4.5 millimeter, 24-inch needle set and use that. And then try the bamboo ones and try the metal and maybe try plastic ones. See which ones feel right to you. And after you've used it, you'll know pretty quick. Oh, I hate those. Every time I push it past, it's annoying, or that made my knitting more relaxing. I could concentrate on other things. And that helps you narrow down what you're looking for. So that's a lot of information.
Thank you very much for that. That's very useful as we move along through this, getting my, making my sweater happen.
And I'll tell you specifically, Kyle, from knitting all these Icelandic sweaters, when you're knitting with this wool, because it is kind of sticky, the bamboo and wood is fine for the main body. When you get up to this neck area, the metal is so much easier. And I found that kind of through trial and error after knitting them. I was like, man, it's getting so hard up here. And once I switched to metal, it was a lot easier on the neck.
I've found already that I'm spending a lot of time dragging stitches, like physically, you know, hauling them. So I think I want something that's a little faster and slicker.
Yeah. If I were to tell anybody, I've been recommending this Haya set and variations of it for about 10 years now. And I've never regretted it. I don't think anyone that has gotten it has regretted it either. It is a workhorse of a needle. As I said, it's not too slippery, and it will solve the problem that Jen was just talking about. And I think it's somewhere in the $100 range as opposed to multiple hundreds. And if you decide you like it, then you do what I did, and you can add more tips in the sizes that you use most often, because you'll probably use the one set for more than one thing once you get going.
Yeah, you will always have more than one project going once you
get into it.
I laughed when you said knitting bag. I kind of laughed like, oh, there's just one, because I have like 10 knitting bags with 10 different projects on my side.
Yeah, if I turn my camera around.
On Earth who has all of the camera bags that they need right now. So yeah. I understand.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Amy. This was incredibly helpful. I urge everybody watching this to check out knitty.com if you haven't already. If you're a newer knitter, it's such a great resource. I've been knitting for decades and I still use knitty.com.
Thank you.
Every time I need the Kitchener stitch, because I can't ever remember those first couple steps. But it's a wonderful resource, so many patterns. And then if you do like it, I encourage you to, chip in $5 for that Patreon and keep them going. Help with what you can in this knitting community, because we are a big giant family that loves to help each other, but we also have bills to pay, right? So again, thank you so much. Kyle learned something today. I learned some stuff today. I'm going to be ordering one of those kits like as soon as I log off.
They're also great people. They come up with some really amazing products. So
that's fantastic.
We got to support each other in this world.
Like Thank you so much for sharing your experience and wisdom with me.
You're most welcome.
Cheers.
Happy knitting. Cheers.